Into the weekend with how these votes are going to go down, but things are looking up for Brett Kavanaugh, and we'll be looking forward to covering every aspect of this. Right. It's been fun to have you in Washington. I mean, I don't know what we're going to do for fun without you now.
It's all yours. The swamp, the sewer, the whole bit. I can't take it anymore. I'm out of here.
Oh, yeah, you go back. Yeah, Hannity, you go back to real America in Long Island.
The high-tax swamp, New York.
Okay. Okay, the oceanfront swamp in Long Island.
What is up with you? You are way overpaid to say that. You got to be kidding.
I think there's gender pay disparity comments here. I'm feeling I'm feeling a trigger coming on. I'm just teasing you. I love having you in Washington, Sean.
I hope you're right in your optimism. We will see. I don't have a lot of faith in some Republicans.
Well, Sean, it was great to have you here, all kidding aside. You have a great trip home.
Good to see you. Have a
all
great
right,
trip.
Welcome to Washington. I'm Laura Ingraham. This is the Ingraham Angle. Breaking news, as Sean just said moments ago. Mitch McConnell announcing on the Senate floor that the Senate Judiciary Committee has received the supplemental FBI background report on Brett Kavanaugh, and we're also told that individual senators will be reviewing the contents in less than 12 hours from now. We'll keep you updated throughout the hour on developments as they come in. And also tonight, is Dr. Ford's story really falling apart? We expose some key inconsistencies from her testimony tonight that others have, well, decided to look the other way on. And we'll also delve into the backlash against President Trump for his comments about Ford with Raymond Arroyo. Plus, a body language expert, oh, I love that, is here to take us through some of her more revealing answers from last week's hearing. I hope she doesn't do that to me, the body language thing, though. I don't want myself to be analyzed. And if these allegations against him are proved false, what are Judge Kavanaugh's legal options? One of the nation's top defamation lawyers will be here to tell us. But first, the Kavanaugh wake-up call the GOP needed. That's the focus of tonight's angle. As ugly and vicious as the war on Brett Kavanaugh has been, it might actually prove to be a gift for Republicans. More fair-minded Americans have grown weary of the Democrats' perpetual intimidation tactics and stalling game. And I think they're beginning to see the smear campaign for what it is. And as a result, the GOP is more energized than they've been since, I think, right after the 2016 election. They want Republicans to stick together on Capitol Hill, not back down in the face of this leftist mob squad, and they want them to fight for what's right, which is what the president did last night in Mississippi.
How did you get home? I don't remember. How'd you get there? I don't remember. Where is the place? I don't remember. How many years ago was it? I don't know. I don't know. What neighborhood was it in? I don't know. Where's the house? I don't know. Upstairs, downstairs, where was it? I don't know. But I had one beer. That's the only thing I remember.
And of course, he nails it. Totally nails it. And for the crime of being honest, the left is slashing back.
The president went to a new low yesterday, even for him, in mocking Dr. Ford.
I can't think of anything more. Inappropriate is not. It doesn't. No, is not descriptive enough. It's mean. It's mean.
Not only a slap in the face to Dr. Ford, but to all survivors and women in general.
You're mean. You're attacking victims. You don't have any empathy. No, he's making a series of common sense conclusions about Ford's very shaky claims and shifting accounts that were based on an uncorroborated memory. Remember last week he said she came off as quite credible. But after that Mitchell report comes out, we begin to weigh what she said initially to what she said before the committee, and it's a whole different story. President Trump is speaking straight to the American people, and he's reflecting their feelings, their frustration about this whole thing. And frankly, no Republican even comes close to being as effective as President Trump is. After 2 bruising and very nasty weeks, I actually see some good emerging. The Kavanaugh battle has pulled the curtain back on just how unprincipled and radical the Democrats have become. A midterm that was once all about Mueller's Russia probe has now become a referendum on the politics of personal destruction, on due process, and on the presumption of innocence. And President Trump's fighting spirit it's become contagious, even among some in the GOP establishment.
This has not been a search for the truth. This has been about search and destroy.
It's time to put this embarrassing spectacle behind us. The American people are sick of the display that's been put on here in the United States Senate.
Whether you're a Trump Republican, a Bush Republican, a McCain Republican, a libertarian, or a vegetarian, you're pissed. I've never seen the Republican Party so unified as I do right now.
Well, with the exception of a few holdouts like Flake, Collins, and Murkowski, Republicans, I think Lindsey Graham is right, they're really united. I think they're as united as they've been since maybe 9/11. Even those establishment types, the ones you just heard, I don't think I can remember a time where they sounded better, because they recognize now that when even a moderate Bush Republican like Brett Kavanaugh can be treated this way, any Republican is vulnerable. Now, how are the voters processing all of this? Here are some of my callers from today's radio show.
I heard the president last night. He wasn't mocking her. He was telling exactly what the American people need to know.
When all this was done and the FBI report comes out and says there's nothing there, nobody is going to try and repair this man's credit.
My parents have, for their entire life, voted Democrat. My parents are livid that the Democrats are trying to destroy a good man's name. They are going to vote straight ticket Republican, and they are never going to look back.
Wow. And meanwhile, Democratic enthusiasm seems to be waning a bit. According to a new NPR poll, there were 10 points separating the number of Democrats and Republicans who said the November elections were very important. But now that number is down to just 2 points. The attacks against Kavanaugh and the ongoing smear campaign have awakened the Republican base, and not a moment too soon. And it's resonating far beyond the base, I think. President Trump said as much last night.
They're destroying him, and they're destroying his reputation, and we can't let that happen. We can't let it happen. I want to do what's right for this country. This is a very important time in our country. The Democrat Party has become too extreme. This is an example of it. And too dangerous to be trusted with power. That is why you must vote Republican on Election Day, and you have to go out and vote.
Like I said before, a lot of the fair-minded voters, people who are not obsessed with politics every day, but just basically have a pretty good barometer on what's right and wrong, these people are thinking, if the Democrats can poison the confirmation of a qualified judge with a clean record, an exemplary judicial record like Kavanaugh's, imagine what they're going to do if they actually get power back, if they're back in power in the House or the Senate. Watch your wallet. A new Fox News poll indicates that the Kavanaugh fight is having a big impact on some key senatorial races. In North Dakota, Republican challenger Kevin Cramer is now leading Senator Heidi Heitkamp by 12 points, 53 to 41. Last month, he was up only by 4, 48 to 44%. And the Missouri Senate race is all tied up at 43%. 3 weeks ago, incumbent Democratic Senator Claire McCaskill was up 3 points on her Republican challenger, Josh Hawley, but no longer. And in Tennessee, the Senate contest there, Republican Marsha Blackburn is now up several points ahead of Democrat Phil Bredesen by 48 to a 43% margin. My friends, Brett Kavanaugh is not just someone I've known for 28 years. He's someone that I know deep in here that he deserves a seat on this Supreme Court. I can't think of many people who deserve it more than he does, as a matter of fact. But no matter what happens next, the Democrats have revealed themselves and their slimeball tactics to the American people. And in the midterms, I think millions of Americans will have a stark choice to make. Do they want to green light more of the Democrats' shameless, scorched earth politics of resistance? Or do they want to vote for candidates who stand for results and something better, like decency and due process? And that's the angle. Joining me now is Dave Bossie, former Trump deputy campaign manager, and Chris Hahn, radio host and former aide to Senator Chuck Schumer. All right, Chris, this FBI report was never going to make a difference to the Democrats, but can't you just admit now that this was all about delay at this point? They weren't going to vote for Kavanaugh anyway, were they?
Well, look, I don't think he had many Democrats that were going to vote for him. There might be 2 or 3 that are still considering it. And I guess they'll read the report tonight and tomorrow, and we'll see what happens. Obviously, the leader filing cloture, I used to work in the Senate. When you filed cloture when I was there, that meant something. So I think it still means something today. So we'll see what happens in the next day or two, whether or not they have the votes to actually confirm Kavanaugh. Him filing cloture to me is bad news for people opposing Kavanaugh right now. I would think that he's probably got the votes if he's making that statement. But we'll see what happens. As for your angle and what this means for the midterms, I find it hard to believe that this is going to bring out more Republicans than would have ordinarily come out anyway. The Republican base is pretty solid in midterm years. It's a Democratic base that fluctuates dramatically. I also find it hard to believe that working class and blue-collar Americans are going to rally behind a prep school guy that probably reminds them more of Ted McGinley's character in Revenge of the Nerds than anything that they know, particularly in their lives.
Did you hear the voters in West Virginia last week? I guess it was over the weekend for Friday. It's all of a blur. Yeah, and Nevada and in Mississippi. This is not exactly, like, New England here. We had Southern Republicans and conservatives. Kavanaugh is a proxy for the 2016 election and the future of the country. It's a proxy issue for the Democrats. It's not about, is a Yale kid that drank too much. Who doesn't drink too much in college? I think the Democrats look like a bunch of teetotaling prudes, in my view. Dave Bossie, I'm going to go to you because Republicans are not sold on this president, and 3 of them at least, on the way he discussed Christine Ford last night in Mississippi, and the 3 Republicans that are pivotal all criticized him. Let's watch.
The president's comments were just plain wrong.
I don't approve of the comments from last night. I thought that they were wrong and extraordinarily unfortunate.
I wish he hadn't have done it. I just say it's kind of appalling.
Are Flake and Coons going on a road show? That's all I have to know. They're like joined at the hip. You can't ever find one without
Laura,
the other.
Hey, Laura, can you hear me? Laura?
Yeah, go ahead.
I couldn't hear Chris Hahn at all.
Okay, it's basically, it was just a series of sound bites. Republicans, Murkowski, Collins, and Flake criticizing the president.
Got it. And you're going to come to me with a question?
Okay. Well, he can't hear me. All right, Chris. I'll just take you on one-on-one.
You're going to come to me with a question.
You got 3 Republicans. You got 3 Republicans that are critical. Okay. Flake, Murkowski, and Collins. They were not wild about the president's comments last night, but that's not going to move their vote one way or another. This report is going to be critical, and I think from everything that I'm hearing, the report does not bolster Christine Ford's credibility at all. At all.
Look, I think it's all about the report. I don't think, they've been critical of the president in the past, and they've still voted with him on many occasions. So I think the report is critical to them. And again, I see the cloture vote, and that concerns me. I would imagine if I was Leader McConnell and I was filing a cloture vote, I would have talked to at least 2 of them. I think they might have lost Murkowski on other issues anyway, but Collins and Flake were very critical on this vote, and I think that I would have made that call and whipped those votes before I made this motion. Now we'll see. Maybe he's just making them take a hard vote ahead of the midterms. But back to the original discussion about the midterms, Laura, I really just don't see this lasting, especially if he is confirmed over the weekend. I don't think that 30 days from now, this is still an issue. And I also don't think that SCOTUS voters, people come out and vote for Supreme Court justices in their thinking when they vote.
I gotta say, Chris, the court was a really important part of Christian conservatives, Catholic conservatives, the faithful. Yes. The court was critical. I disagree with you. I know it's the wall and it's trade but the court was critical. Hold on, we got Bossie back, and we're shortchanging Bossie because he couldn't hear. Dave, there was a gremlin in your earpiece. But we're talking about Collins, Flake, and Murkowski. This report, I don't think, is gonna make Christine Ford's testimony any more credible. Do you think that they are going to buck the president on this for any reason at this point?
No, I don't think they're going to do that at all. I think that this is why the president got elected. It's very important to the Republican voters across this country that sent Donald Trump to the White House that he get this Supreme Court nominee through, and we're going to get Kavanaugh through, and we've seen a bump throughout the polling across the country. But one of the most important things that the Republicans need to wake up to is the chaos that this Democrat Party is involved in. Let's look at this last 2 weeks, the chaos of Washington and of America. That's what you get with a Democrat majority in the House. You get this every single day, nothing else. Only Trump derangement syndrome, Trump hatred, and the ability for them to use subpoena depositions, the hearing process, to rake people over the coals and ruin their lives, just like they've tried to do to Brett Kavanaugh.
All right, guys, we got to go to John Turley now. Professor Turley, the Senate now has their hands on the FBI supplementary background report on Kavanaugh, but the Senate Democrats aren't waiting really for the findings. They've already made up their minds. Listen to Cory Booker today.
Ultimately, not whether he's innocent or guilty, this is not a trial, but ultimately, has enough questions be raised that we should not move on to another candidate. And that long list put together by the Heritage Foundation and the Federalist Society, move on to another candidate.
Oh, yeah, we'll get right on that, Cory. Joining me now is constitutional law expert Jonathan Turley. Professor Turley, how damaging is it that Democrats have seemingly abandoned the idea of just fundamental fairness, due process? I take this away from the Republican-Democrat prism right now and look at it as just, what are the facts, sir? What are the facts, ma'am?
All right. Well, what's troubling is that the Democrats keep this mantra, this is not a trial, and that this is just how you feel about the judge. They're acting as a fact finder. That's different from sitting in a committee and voting on legislation. There's an element of fairness and decency that has to come in. So what's your standard? Even if you apply a clear preponderance standard, that often means that you're about 75% certain of your decision. Could you say that on this evidence? Could you even say by preponderance that it tips either way? I think the most you could possibly say is this is what we call an equipoise. It's equal, if you believe both sides equally. So under any of those standards, it's very hard to vote against Kavanaugh unless you go with Senator Booker's idea that it no longer matters. If someone accuses you, if there are enough people accuse you.
One accusation, uncorroborated, is enough to knock you out of a promotion
whether you're innocent or guilty or not. By the way, would you want a justice that took that position? These senators kept on asking him, what type of justice will you be? Would you want a justice that follows the standard that these senators are suggesting?
That's a great point. Oh my God, I wish that point was actually raised last week at the hearing, because of course they wouldn't. And many of these same Democrats are in favor of prison reform, which this administration is pursuing, sentencing reform, which I think they're going to get to, the idea of redemption and clemency in general, which, again, the old Democrat Party used to embrace. So it is a bit of a turnabout for them on that. Do you think that the FBI investigation itself, now it's not going to become public, it's some weird process here, only one copy will be brought to the Senate. It's like the Trans-Pacific Partnership. Remember that was like kept in a vault in the basement and you couldn't take notes on it?
Someone has to swallow it.
Yeah, exactly, at the end. So it's one copy, and I guess they have an hour, a half hour each to read it. Only 9 staffers are going to be able to look at it. It's not to be made public. And Mitch McConnell really wants to ensure that it's not to be made public. Is that going to hurt Republicans, or is there some wisdom to keeping this within the Senate?
Well, he's right. I'm not too sure I would put those time limitations on it, but he's certainly right about keeping it out of the public view. This is not a Sherlock Holmes novel. This is not, a conclusion at the end of a gotcha where we found, the lead pipe in the dining room with the body. These are just basically raw statements. And when you do litigation, particularly with 302s, and I do that a lot, they're the rawest of the raw. I mean, these are FBI agents going into the field and saying, this is what this guy said. And they often put in a lot of stuff that even they may doubt because they want to bring in all this data into the system. It's not fair to a person to have that type of raw information released. And it's not fair to Judge Kavanaugh, and it's not fair to all the other nominees. And these things have not been made public in the past.
Well, because in the past, like with the Anita Hill thing, she had made an allegation that they looked looked into and could find no corroboration for, but then that was leaked.
Right.
So that was never supposed to see the light of day. But again, they tried to push it onto the public, and that ended up, doing what it did to that nomination. Also, ultimately, obviously, the confirmation went through. Jonathan Turley, it's always great to see you. Thanks so much for being here. And what a great point. Is that the kind of justice we want him to be on the court? Christine Blasey Ford's accusation against Kavanaugh, it seems to be collapsing on almost every front. We will detail those points next. Plus, a top defamation lawyer joins me on what recourse Kavanaugh might have if those accusations bear no fruit. He was a former partner at Kirkland & Ellis with Kavanaugh, where he was also a lawyer. Stay there. Christine Ford's story is falling apart, period. First, Ford's ex-boyfriend and a high school friend may have exposed some blatant lies surrounding her polygraph test. And do you remember Ford's bizarre story about wanting 2 doors on the front of her house? Well, the remodeling project, she claimed, prompted her to reveal the assault allegations back in 2012 to her then therapist and to her husband. Well, now a Real Clear Politics investigation found some discrepancies in her timeline. Records indicate the double door renovation took place in 2008, 4 years earlier. Joining us with more is Victor Davis Hanson, Senior Fellow at the Hoover Institution. All right, VDH, the 2 doors, and of course the author of the book, The Case for Trump. Victor, you've made this point that there's a big difference between credibility based on facts and personal empathy. Explain how these latest details illuminate that point.
Well, I think coming into where we are today, she wasn't able to locate the supposed assault or the time or the date, and she had the early 80s, the mid-80s, the late 80s. She was a young mid-teenager, a little bit older, so there was a lot of doubt. And then we've had the collapse of the 5th accuser, 6th, 4th, 5th, 4th, 3rd, 2nd, the Schwetnick, Ramirez. That didn't help. And now we have the boyfriend coming forward, and her own testimonies where she said about that she admitted that she flies regularly. That's corroborated by the boyfriend. The 2-door thing, people in Palo Alto have 2 doors for one purpose, not because they're claustrophobic, but because they want to get extra income and have a renter come in. That seems to be true of her. I think the tragedy, though, Laura, is that I don't think she ever thought she'd have to come forward at all. She would write this anonymous writ, and then that would sort of float out and cast doubt, and that might just panic the Republicans, and Kavanaugh would withdraw. But it's sad because she gave one too many narratives. She gave a narrative to the therapist, she gave a narrative to Dianne Feinstein, she gave a narrative to the Washington Post, she gave a narrative through her testimony, and she butted up against a pretty seasoned prosecutor, and those narratives cannot be reconciled. They're mutually exclusive. They contradict each other. And whether it's on the lie detector or the circumstances about flying or particular names that are supposed to corroborate. And so here we are where it's collapsed.
Hold on, Victor. Here, to illustrate how the left just, they substitute emotion for reason. And they want everyone else to buy into it as well. So Jennifer Granholm, one of your favorites, said this a few days ago.
The part that's so frustrating about this is that we have a woman who gets up there and takes an oath and who comes across to most people as incredibly credible. If that's I'm not sure that that's the right thing to say, but as amazingly credible.
Incredibly credible, Laura, amazingly credible. It's a shocker she's not
that comes right out of the French Revolution, not the history of American jurisprudence. You can be sincere maybe or empathetic, but it has nothing to do with reason and logic and credibility. She wasn't credible, and I think that the fact that she was empathetic and sincere gets you only so far. So in a weird way, Cory Booker was right when he said it doesn't matter anymore because we're into the realm not of legality anymore. It's not about Kavanaugh, it's not about Trump, it's about raw, sheer politics in the arena. And the Democrats are saying, you know what, we've lost the Senate, we've lost the House, we've lost the presidency, we're going to lose the Supreme Court. We have no other trajectory to get this progressive agenda, so we're going to bet the farm, so to speak, that we're going to use revolutionary tactics. And now this election is a referendum on whether you believe you can swarm a senator on the way to work, or you can get in the face of a senator in an elevator, or bother somebody in a restaurant.
Yeah, I mean,
that's what they're saying.
Accepted behavior now here in Washington. I mean, no matter where you go, it's accepted. You can put your middle finger out in front of children and say, you know, blank off, and they think, oh, that's more power to you, power to the people.
Yeah, that's the existential referendum the American people are going to decide. Are you for due process? Are you for revolutionary fervor? Are you for reason? Are you for emotion? Are you for this street annex of Antifa brought into the Senate? Are you for custom and practice of the U.S. Congress? And, you know, there's one other element. I think they're really angry because it's kind of a self-inflicted wound. Barack Obama set that precedent when he said, I won, election matters. Okay, that's what the president does when he wins. He picks people. Joe Biden, 30 years ago, never in his right mind thought that the Senate Judiciary Committee would be controlled by Republicans, and there'd be a lame duck Democrat when he made the Biden rule. And then finally, Harry Reid never thought they'd take back the Senate. The Republicans would.
It's all coming back, Victor, over time, but it's all coming back to Biden.
Yeah,
it's all coming back to Biden. The truth ultimately wins out in the end, and it comes back to Biden. Thanks so much, Victor. Great to see you as always. And what happens next? So if all these stories, or any of these stories, are proven false, what recourse could Judge Kavanaugh have? Or can you just smear and swarm your way back into power? Tom Clare is just one of the country's preeminent attorneys on defamation cases, an old friend, and he joins us now. Tom, thanks so much for being here. Can Kavanaugh pursue a defamation case here if one or any of these claims is false?
Absolutely, Laura. There is so much reckless conduct out there and reckless speech, starting with the accusers, starting with the media who are repeating these uncorroborated and baseless allegations without knowing whether it's true or false. It is absolutely reckless. Celebrity lawyers that are jumping in front of cameras to repeat this stuff. He absolutely has recourse. It's the only thing in our system that you can do is to pursue a defamation claim.
Well, so when Hannity comes out the other night and says, I talked to someone in Florida who said that Kavanaugh dropped Quaaludes into a punch bowl and spiked the punch bowl. Well, that's the crime. You can't put drugs into a punch. Now, is that enough for a defamation case? Could it be?
It absolutely can be. You're falsely accusing someone of a criminal act, of drugging someone for purposes of a sexual assault. And if that statement was made recklessly, and I certainly believe it was, there's plenty of elements of recklessness in that sort of a conduct, it gives rise to a defamation claim. And Judge Kavanaugh should absolutely keep those options on the table.
But don't we have horrible laws in this country for public figures who are maligned? I'm a public figure. People can basically say anything you want. You kind of shrug your shoulders, like cut of water off a duck's back for me at this point. But it's pretty amazing. President Trump actually spoke about this last night. I want to play it for you. Let's watch.
We better start as a country getting smart and getting tough and not letting that stuff right back there, all those cameras, tell us how to live our lives. Fake news. We have the worst libel laws anywhere in the world. They can say anything they want, and we can't sue them, because if you're famous, you can't sue. Figure that one out. Think of your son. Think of your husband.
He's so great. Yeah. I mean, I'm sorry, we're just watching this, enjoying this in the studio. I could watch it for an hour. A false statement, you say it knowingly. You have to show recklessness when it's a public figure with malice.
So malice is the constitutional standard, and what that means for a public figure is you have to show that the speaker knew it was false or acted recklessly in making that statement. And that's what we've got here. We've got all sorts of red flags. We've got all sorts of inconsistencies in the testimony. We've got all sorts of reasons why people should be pumping the brakes, but instead everybody's diving in front of cameras and destroying this man's reputation. And the only recourse he has is to go to the courts and get a vindication.
Well, if he's a confirmed Supreme Court justice, he's not going to be filing a defamation case.
Well, I wouldn't think so, but I think we would.
Mark Judge could, perhaps.
Mark Judge could. Others involved in this saga
he's
could,
not a
for
public
sure.
figure.
But even Justice Kavanaugh, and I do certainly hope that he is confirmed, he deserves to be, but even then, his legacy will be tarnished by this. He will never know, and his great-grandchildren will never get a chance to meet him, but what they will read about him, thanks to the internet and thanks to this, are these scurrilous allegations. And even if
train, all these. So you think he should pursue this, even if he makes it to the court?
I think he ought to keep it on the table, even if he makes it to the court.
Tom, thank you. Tom, this is illuminating. We really wanted to talk to you. Thank you so much for making time for us tonight. One of the top defamation lawyers in this entire country. Up next, a special Kavanaugh edition of Seen and Unseen with Raymond Arroyo. You don't want to miss this one. Stay there. It's time for our Seen and Unseen segment with a special focus on the Kavanaugh fight. Tonight's edition breaks down the scene, comparing Trump's remarks last night to Dr. Ford's actual testimony, and the unseen. Secrets from inside the Blasey Ford yearbook. Joining us with more, Raymond Arroyo, Fox News contributor, New York Times bestselling author of the Will Wilder series. Raymond, this is wild because we have located a page of the Christine Ford yearbook, a page that she wrote herself. It's an entry, not a whole page, but it's like a note that she wrote herself. Now, what does it tell us? We'll put it up on the screen.
Well, here she refers to herself as Blas, B-L-A-S. It tells us something about the culture at this Holton Arms school. You can't read it, but I will read some of these lines from you. Some of them say, pass out in John, ... Later, traff till you toss, I guess throw up. Whiz in the shower. Pass out on garage floor.
Oh, who doesn't do that?
Yeah, well, who doesn't do that? No, because you wet the bed. I'd like to get the full story. I want a hearing of what these lines
notes
mean.
Friends of mine who go to Holton, or that same vintage, said that basically that's a note on weekends. It describes various things that happened on the weekends.
That they did on the weekends.
So it's high school in the 80s.
Well, this one, I love Mr. Scott's Wee Wee and Orange on Rug. I'm not even going.
I don't even want to know where that goes.
And then there's pictures of her at underage parties where there's drinking, binge drinking going on. They have a caption where they talk about a girl passing out from binge drinking. Look, this is what this tells us. At Holton Arms, these girls were not exactly at a convent school praying compline with the nuns in the evenings. This was kind of fast times at Holton High. I mean, they were chasing boys and drinking booze. It was the culture of the place. Yeah. I don't like looking at
anyone's yearbook.
I find this unseemly.
It's so stupid. But if you're going to comb through Kavanaugh's yearbook, which we think is stupid, then at least take a gander. How people miss this entry is beyond me. But it's just kind of a snapshot of some wild times.
What's good for the goose is good for the accuser. And in that vein, I have copies here of the Glastonbury High yearbook, your yearbook. And, well, I'm going to share this maybe later in the week.
Okay, let me just...
And we're going to get your boyfriend to call in during the segment.
That'll be fun. Peter, don't call.
The president is taking fire for comments he made last night at the rally you saw earlier about the credibility of Dr. Ford's claims. We attached those comments to Dr. Ford's for some context. Look at this.
How did you get home? I don't remember.
Has anyone come forward to say to you, hey, remember, I was the one that drove you home?
No.
Where is the place? I don't remember.
You've described this as being near the country club, wherever this house was. Is that right?
I would describe it as somewhere between my house and the country club.
How many years ago was it? I don't know.
How were you able to narrow down the time frame?
I can't give the exact date.
But I had one beer. That's the only thing I remember.
I drank one beer. Brett and Mark were visibly drunk.
Raymond, what do you think the impact of...
Well, I got to tell you this. Like you, most Americans, first of all, they're looking at this. This is like President Dangerfield. Trump's timing, it's funny,
First of all, that was not scripted.
No, he's making this up, but it's evidentiary-based, and I'll give him that.
He was like, boom, boom, boom.
It's feisty, it's fun. People love this.
Bing, 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 bing.
On the other hand, this is very risky for Brett Kavanaugh's nomination. There are senators who are on the fence.
Yeah, Murkowski, Flake, and Collins all were annoyed by it.
And they're looking at Donald Trump all along, and he's been presidential, reserved, solemn. All of a sudden, he's going into the nightclub.
I like that.
I know you like it, but it might push some of these senators on the fence in the wrong direction. However, as a political speech, this is riling up the base, and it's great for midterms, no doubt about it.
All right. Now, reacting to all of this, some Hollywood stars are planning a rally in D.C. tomorrow. How ridiculous. To protest the nomination.
Well, they're very upset. And let me tell you, men are, you heard from Trump, men are very worried about these false claims. This is Alyssa Milano. Listen to what she said. Of course, the guest star at the Kavanaugh hearings. Watch.
Whereas Trump might say that white men have it very difficult right now, I'm saying that women, young people, have had it difficult for generations and generations and generations, and we will not be silenced any longer. And if that means that men have a hard time right now, then I'm sorry. This is the way the pendulum has to shift.
Sorry, Raymond.
Yeah, I guess we're out of luck.
Yeah, sorry.
you can make empty charges and just take it.
I have this to say to Alyssa Milano. Who's the boss? Donald Trump.
Oh, okay. Well,
sorry for now, at least as the president.
There's a big protest rally. John Legend, Whoopi Goldberg, Lena Dunham, right here in D.C. They're also staging a walkout again across the nation. Remember, this happened a few weeks ago. They wore black. They walked out of their place of work. Nothing says I want a good Supreme Court like leaving your job in the middle of the day. But that's what they're doing. So this is where we are. We will cover that and bring you full coverage of that tomorrow.
John Legend, if you sing, maybe I'll show up. But other than that, I'm not really interested in your political commentary.
Can't wait to
hear
from your high school boyfriending.
Oh, you know.
Do the full report. Everybody.
We keep in touch, okay?
Okay.
All right. I've already inoculated
I'm going to
myself
report. You
against
decide.
From coming up, pretend crying, a baby girl voice, and inappropriate smiling. Those are just some of the things that a body language expert says stood out when Christine Blasey Ford was testifying. She joins us next. And our next guest is a nonpartisan and unbiased body language and communications expert. Now, she spent decades as an expert witness for criminal and civil cases, and she's made an objective analysis for the Ingram angle of the Ford-Kavanaugh testimony. And Dr. Lillian Glass joins us from L.A. with her findings. Lillian, thank you so much for being here. I find this entire topic fascinating, and I love it.
Great to be here, Laura.
I want to take you through a few moments from Christine Ford's testimony and get your reaction. So the first up were her comments about her therapist's notes. Let's watch.
Okay.
Did you show a full or partial set of those marriage therapy records to the Washington Post?
I don't remember. I remember summarizing for her what they said. So I'm not quite sure if I actually gave her the record.
So it's possible that the reporter did not see these notes.
I don't know if I can't recall whether she saw them directly or if I just told her what they said.
Lillian, what does that tell you?
Well, it's fascinating because, first of all, she uses that little baby girl voice that she uses when she's feeling vulnerable or caught, so to speak. And you're seeing her having her head to the side, which is a very vulnerable body language position. And she doesn't seem to remember what happened actually 2 months ago, but she certainly can remember what happened with Kavanaugh. So it's fascinating to see what happens. She's looking down. So in terms of this situation, it's not ringing true. She's not being forthright here for some reason.
Now, there's another moment where she's talking about her best friend, Leland Kaiser, who she had reported was in the house at the time of the alleged assault, and she was questioned about Ms. Kaiser. Let's watch.
Do you have any particular motives to ascribe to Leland?
Leland has significant health challenges, and I'm happy that she's focusing on herself and getting the health treatment that she needs, and she let me know that she needed her lawyer to take care of this for her.
Wow.
That's talk about throwing her under the bus. Forget the body language.
Exactly.
But what about the way she looks, appears, and her vocal inflection at that moment? This is her
vocal
friend.
inflection. Yes, her vocal inflection is completely different. Like she says, I'm really happy, and she doesn't show happiness for her friend. And she does throw her under the bus, telling about her friend's health problems. And then she talks about the fact that the lawyer wants to get involved, you know, maybe against her for exposing this. I mean, this is quite personal information. And then you see her head down, and she's looking down. She's not confident in terms of what she's saying, and it's very disconcerting.
Now, another moment is when she's discussing the polygraph. That's a pretty big deal. I mean, it just happened a couple months earlier, not even a couple of months earlier, when she sat down for a polygraph. I want your take on the body language here.
Were you audio and video recorded when you were taking that test?
Okay, so I remember being hooked up to a machine, like being placed onto my body, and being asked a lot of questions and crying a lot. That's my primary memory of that test. I don't know that I wasn't listening to every detail about whether it was audio or video recorded.
That's not even getting into the grandmother's funeral timestamp on that. But what are your thoughts there?
Two things, Laura. First of all, when you start a sentence with so, okay, so, you're in trouble. And then when you're looking down and you're not communicating straightforward to a very easy answer, there's a problem here.
Well, so again, if you're answering truthfully, would your eyes lock on the questioner? A lot of people look away when they're telling the truth.
You'd look direct.
But a lot of people look away, don't they?
But then, of course, because they're not comfortable, but she's looking down. She's not just looking away. She's specifically looking down. And that speaks volumes. And she's talking about the polygraph. She doesn't remember. And this happened, as you said, recently in her lifetime, not 35 years ago.
All right, I'm checking my body language, so making sure I'm looking straight. Forthright, Lillian. All right, thanks so much. We really appreciate it. And coming up, a Democratic staffer caught today after engaging in criminality against Kavanaugh supporting GOP senators. The shocking details of what happened next.